people can be resource magnets. That would be the typical way you would imagine, right? They're quite charismatic. If they walk in a room, people like being around them. And I have someone who's a resource magnet who is not, but they are so good at what they do that when they meet anyone in that field, somebody just wants to work with them. I would say for each person that I've backed, I've known what it is about that person that I'm truly backing.
Maria Palma is a world-class venture capitalist.
She has invested early into unicorns like Lovable,
which is the fastest growing startup in the world.
Younger and going to university to study computer science, do you still think it's a good idea, or should they be trying to focus on something else?
I think in the shorter term.
Welcome back to Decoded. My name's Alfie Whattam, and this is the show where I speak to experts about what it takes to build great teams and companies. Make sure that you click the follow or subscribe button for more great content like this, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Maria, you've invested in some incredible startups like Lovable, which is one of my favorite apps, legitimately. Lottie, where I'm friends with their founder, Chris. What do you look for when you're deciding to invest in a startup?
To be honest, it is pretty much all the team. It's mostly the people behind it and why they're doing what they're doing. And there is a market component, and you need to have a view on what you think the markets are and how they play out. But also, I mean, as we're living in this moment of AI, I don't think it'll shock anyone that the pace of change is happening in seconds and minutes, not weeks and hours or even months and years as it used to. And so you can't predict where the future is going to go. You just have to believe that that team can navigate the future in the most interesting way.
So what is it about the team that you look for? Like, I do a bit of angel investing, and it's so hard to kind of make a proper assessment of people when you've got a 10-slide deck and you've had, 2 1-hour-long meetings or something. Like, what is it specifically that you're looking for within the founders?
So, I mean, if I had a really easy answer to that question that was like sort of recipe based, it would make my job a lot less challenging. But essentially, I spend a lot of time getting to know the person more. So I don't usually let founders pitch me the deck ever. I read the deck, I have points of view, I ask them questions on the market, but I think that for a first meeting, if we spend 45 minutes talking about the person and 5 to 10 minutes on the business, that's probably typical for me. And we tend to talk about the business more after that. I would say it's really about getting to know the person. And there are traits, and I've thought about this a lot, that you can attribute, and they are sometimes true, but typically you can't really turn it into a recipe, especially at the earliest stages. So I think about my gut actually as sort of its own machine learning algorithm. And I've, met hundreds of people for 10 years at this point, and you just know it when you see it to some extent, and it doesn't look the same all the time. But I would say for each person that I've backed, I've known kind of what it is about that person that I'm truly backing, right? Like, I think a good example, you mentioned Chris from Lottie. I literally just got off the phone with him 30 seconds before our call. And, I'm actually taking his Creator Academy program right now, because I should be better at building my personal brand, and I'm not. But it's interesting because when I watched his intro video, the way he thought about building personal brand was so Chris, right? Because Chris is like obsessive when there's a problem he cares about, and there's just certain things that make Chris, and when you understand who that is, he's just a person I would back time and time again.
Yeah, no, me too. Whenever I speak to him about LinkedIn or how to build an audience, he has forgotten more about this stuff than I've even begun to learn. So he knows everything that I need to know, basically, when it comes to that side of the coin.
It's true, but it's not even the knowledge. It's just the approach. Like, I laughed because in his intro call, he was like, I was burnt out, so I quit my startup. So I started this LinkedIn thing, but then it bothered me. Like, why wasn't I growing? So I made a spreadsheet of every single person and why they grew and which posts. But it's like the obsession and the data that he used and the way he approached that problem was also just so, It's not the typical thing for someone who's trying to take a break from being burnt out,
So it's the level of detail that you're looking for. There's somebody who approaches a problem in a unique way where they become obsessed over it, essentially. Because you say that you don't have a recipe, you say that you're trusting your gut, but that there must be some trends or something in particular that you're trying to zero in on.
I think that it's different for each person, right? So I backed a company that's doing an AI first contract research organization. And so they built a lot of AI and robotics tools at Moderna when the vaccines for COVID and stuff came out, and they're now doing it in a different setting. And that team will just solve this problem come hell or high water, no matter what format. Like, I don't think they even had to be startup founders. That wasn't an aspiration of theirs. They're just going to solve this problem. So I think it's different for each person, but there are some common trends the founders that I tend to back tend to have done different things in their life, meaning like there's been some point of view where they did something very different than what was prescribed or what everyone around them thought they should do, or some period where they just really listened to their gut. I think that's one of the hardest things to get right as a founder, is to get all the advice and know what to shed and say this is irrelevant, and know what to listen to. And I think that there are some things like that, like they're always kind of, I like to use the term resource magnetism, which means they attract people and things to them. So from hiring to customers to whatnot, and they tend to be resilient. But I think if you create it too much, it doesn't help you do the job well. And it also, like from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, doesn't help you see the right things. Like, for example, you can see resilience in lots of different ways, and people can be resource magnets. Like, I have a resource magnet in my portfolio that would be the typical way you would imagine, right? They're quite charismatic. If they walk in a room, people like being around them. And I have someone who's a resource magnet who is not. They are quiet, they're introverted, but they are so good at what they do that when they meet anyone in that field, somebody just wants to work with them and help them, right? So you can be a magnet in lots of different types of way. So that's kind of what I mean when I say I don't look for it the same way.
That makes sense. A lot of the time, if you're trying to find a company like a Lovable, which I could talk about for hours, because I've personally built 20 different apps within Lovable that we've sold on to our customers now. So like, for people that say it's just for front ends or prototypes, like that there is a lot that can go into this that can really turn it into a superpower app. But for people that are building applications like that, when you're trying to find those individuals, it's not as if you can just, fire up LinkedIn or fire up X and then suddenly start picking them out. You have to dig a little bit deeper and look for people that might not be as popular in the world where you're finding them. So when it comes to finding those people, you need to have unpopular strategies and different ways about going about it. What's an unpopular opinion, Maria, that you hold in venture that perhaps other people don't believe and follow? That
outbound is better than inbound. I mean, I have people that send me deals, but I think at this point of time, it's like most founders that end up backing, I've gone out and found and chased down and met in some capacity, as opposed to someone. It used to run differently. It used to be like Series A fund would meet a deal, say this founder's incredible, too early for us, send it to a C fund. That doesn't happen anymore. And so usually, if something's being sent to me, I assume it's being sent to me for some reason, but it may not be the people that I'm typically trying to back. And Lovable is a good example, but I actually did kind of have a thesis. So the year 2023, when ChatGPT took off, I had been around machine learning and AI investing since 2015, but I was never the person who was going to win it, to be honest. Wasn't like a Matt Turk who's been talking about it for decades or whatnot. And I almost backed a founder in London, actually. And she ended up stopping the startup she was going to found, and she joined ChatGPT as one of the coders on the product. And it was pretty small at the time. The number of coders there was sub 20. And she and I had a lunch conversation, and I said, this is transformational for everything in life. Like, I feel like I need to spend all my time doing this, yet I feel like I'm not the person who's like been doing this for 10 years deeply and going to win. And she said something nicer than this, but what I heard was like, don't be stupid. If you believe that, just go learn it. And so I spent all of 2023 diving in deeper on like, what were the themes of AI, reading papers, talking to people. And I sort of came up with these 6 areas that I thought were really interesting at the time. Some of them are still quite interesting. And one of them was code gen. So I got to Anton because someone said Anton was amazing, not because I was mapping out a code gen space. And quite frankly, the code gen space, quote unquote, at the time was like only came up when I was talking to researchers. I was talking to people at Fair, other places. But there was no windsurfer, there was no cursor. Like, we were still very early in that being a thing. And so what was interesting is when I had some semblance that was a trend that was interesting, but no idea who was going to win. And I actually think a lot of the kind of prevailing wisdom at the time was that GitHub Copilot was going to win, and that the big players had distribution, and distribution mattered more than ever in AI at the time, and yada, yada. And a lot of people didn't think there was going to be a cursor windsurf. Lovable. And then you meet Anton and Fabian, both incredible. And their vision was always so large, even though their first product vision was, here's how we're going to do the beachhead. It was always, this is the last piece of software you're going to use. It can enable anyone to code. It was always this really big vision. And you just knew from the history of both of their stories and what they built with GPT Engineer, but just really the kind of minds that they were going to go after this in a very big way. So I think for me, that was what was obvious at the time. It wasn't obvious exactly how code generation was going to play out. And I agree with you. I'm just amazed every day by what people are building on top of Lovable. I have venture-backed companies doing, millions of dollars in revenue that have stuff in production code from Lovable. And I have a friend who pinged me last night saying my daughter built this amazing thing on Lovable, and she's 8 years old and she doesn't know how to code. So like it's really enabling just a wide group of people, which is an incredible thing to see.
Yeah, certainly. This is a quick message to tell you about my company, Alpha AI. We built Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter who screens candidates for you on autopilot. You can make your recruitment process 10 times faster, 90% lower cost, and significantly improve the candidate experience, all with our AI agent for hiring. Learn more at welovealpha.com or click the link below in the description. And now, back to the episode. As Lovable and Bolt and Replit and all these code gen applications get better and better, do you think companies will be hiring more or less software developers in a few years from now?
That's a really good question. So this was one of my thesis areas, was like, what are the second and third order implications of code gen? So less like which are the tools, but like what does it change? I think probably if you fast forward 10 years, you will have less software engineers, but you will still have them and they might be in different roles. I actually think the more interesting thing is it allows engineers to be creative again. I think that's the interesting, compelling point, is that engineers usually become engineers because they love problem solving and building things. Most people I know who code, the first time they coded their first product, they're like, oh my God, I just built something out of thin air. And so people love to build and be creative. And they've been put in these software engineering roles for a long time where you're debugging, following a process, doing a Jira ticket, writing stuff in Slack all day. Like it's not been the most creative experience. And I think we might be entering a world where that is actually a huge unlock and untap of creativity. And if I think about the next 5 to 10 years, I think one thing that I'm already seeing is more engineers turned founder. There's always been a lot of engineers turn founder, CTOs turn founder, but we're seeing a lot of just engineers turn founder. And I think there's probably a 5-year period, I don't know the amount, but there's a certain amount of years where it is super beneficial to understand how code works, to know how to review it, to know what to look for, even if you're automating a lot of it, before that skill set is no longer needed. But I think it's there for a while.
Most VCs that I know, they really preferably look for co-founding teams of somebody that's technical, somebody that's on the marketing and sales side that can come together, and sometimes a third co-founder for operations or some other area. Do you think that dynamic will change in terms of what investors are ideally look for as code becomes easier and easier to create an MVP just by speaking in English or whatever language? Do you think that dynamic will change?
100%. It already has. I've advised 3 people in the last 2 months to just get founding engineers and not CTOs. Sometimes you would get a CTO. It really depends on what you're building, how complex it is. And it really depends on the person. I don't like cookie cutter things in general. And I don't like cookie cutter team thinking either. So like, I don't prescribe this and this and that. And I actually way more care that the team has a reason to work together and has worked together before. You'll almost never see me back a team that has just started working together. Almost never. It can work. I have seen it not work a lot. And I also think it's just, some of my favorite founding teams are where these people have just like, even though they like a lot of other people, they just rate each other more than anyone else in the world, and they wouldn't build with anyone else. And I feel like it's really hard to found a company. And so you have to have a really deep, strong relationship that's going to go through all the ups and downs. And so I care about that a lot more than you have to have this plus this plus this.
How about people that are younger and going to university to study computer science? Do you still think it's a good idea, or should they be trying to focus on something else?
I have been debating this a lot. And as a mother of 2 young children, I think about this too. I mean, I certainly don't think my kids will be studying computer science by the time they get there. I just had this debate with someone whose child is going into college. I mean, I think in some ways, in the shorter term, it is still valuable for the same reason I mentioned before. But I actually think it's not, I also don't think of university education as like truly one-to-one applicable. Like I studied industrial engineering. So I always used to joke that I'm an engineer that can't do anything because I can't code, can't build anything mechanical. But turned out statistics and systems thinking has come back around in fashion. But truthfully, I think it's more the process of learning and learning how to learn if you do it right. And I think learning how to problem solve, be creative, have critical thinking has never been more applicable. So I think anything you study and the way you study it and the way you teach yourself how to learn is the most important thing you're going to do when you go to university or when you drop out, however you do it.
Yeah, like me, I did. I also have 2 young kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, so they are super young. Thank you, thank you. And I was thinking exactly the same thing. Like computer science would be incredible to learn if at that point in 18, 19 years, it's still, a course. I mean, who knows at this point? But something like physics or mathematics, which is first principles thinking and just allows you to look at the world in that logical way, regardless of what you go on to do, it's going to serve you pretty well, I hope and imagine.
I mean, I love math and science. I'm married to an ex-physicist, but I would say, there's that quote that says, don't ask the world what you should do. Ask what makes you come alive, because the world needs people who have come alive. I think about it more like that. It's more like, what is going to just get you up in the morning? What's going to make you excited? What's going to bring out your passion, and what's going to bring out your strengths? And go do that, whether it's philosophy or math or language, theater, whatever. I'm looking at a founder right now. She's the most incredible story, and she just was really into material science at like 13.
Wow.
So much so that she helped a PhD person figure out that he was missing glucose in his recipe to make plastics from egg whites. But that, it just brought alive her competency and her capabilities. But it could have, for someone else, it won't be material science.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, a lot of your investments are in AI, Maria, and outside of the code gen tools we just discussed a moment ago, you said when you were putting together your thesis, there were like 6 or 7 areas that you thought AI was going to transform the world over the next, let's say, 5-10 years. What are some of those other areas where you think AI is going to have a huge impact on the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will transform into way more than 5 or 6 areas. I think it's just trying to figure out where I want to invest and where I think there's defensibility in short term, in early stage investing is more of the challenge. I would say a couple areas. One is kind of AI meets hard science. So if you think about sort of proprietary data, and a lot of places like biology or chemistry, it's hard to learn those things overnight, and there's a lot of proprietary data sets. So for example, I backed in Berlin a company called Dunia, which is using AI and robotics to create new material science discovery and catalysis, and sort of a new take on that. And so I think any kind of AI hard science, there's a lot of interesting marriages happening there. And it's also, I think, just going to even transform the field of research and R&D in the fundamental form of it, for sure. I think a lot about robotics and where AI and robotics play together. I think a lot about agentic payments and how we actually get agents to not just send back information and do workflows, but actually act on your behalf and pay things. And as a person who's invested for the better part of a decade in fintech infrastructure, it's just not set up to do that right now with Stripe. And so there will be some interesting things there. And I think I've also been thinking a lot about the future of compute and how that changes. And, that's taking a lot of different shapes as we go. And then also the enterprise and what the enterprise will actually adopt in AI, which has been changing pretty drastically every couple of months.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions on those points, because each of those areas are super, super fascinating. Okay, so new sciences, hard sciences. Do you think we'll make new discoveries through AI? Elon recently said by the time we get to Grok 5, it will be discovering new physics that we hadn't even begun to contemplate. Do you feel like researchers will essentially, all research will be done through AI in the future? We're starting to see Nobel Prizes being won through computer scientists. Will all Nobel Prizes in different scientific areas be won by a AI algorithm, essentially?
So I think 100% there'll be a new discovery in AI. I think it'd be faster than we think. I also think quantum comes online at some point, and then that just sort of magnifies it completely. I don't know if it'll be, I think algorithms will discover things on their own for sure, but I don't know if Nobel Prizes will go to algorithms. It's a good question. I think we're still grappling a lot as a society with how do we treat AIs and what do they do. I think a lot of I've looked at 3 or 4 things this year already that are sort of doing AI research, and a lot of them are augmenting existing R&D teams. So I think we don't know yet what will be the human and what will be the system, but it'll be the best of both is my view.
Okay. On robotics, we're at the very early stages now of humanoid general purpose robotics starting to enter not just the warehouse, but the home. Do you feel in the next, let's say, 10 years that the majority of people living in a first world country will have a humanoid robot that will be serving them and helping them day to day?
I think it's definitely in the future. I think it's much harder to put a time on it. And the funny thing about robots, and I've been in funds investing in robots for 10 years, and in the early days of podcasting, not now when everyone listens to podcasts, but at the very early days, there was this meme that I'll never forget that says, there's a lot of podcasting, but not a lot of pod listening. And that's actually, I feel, about a number of a variety of spaces right now. But one of them is humanoids. I think humanoids are very capable of things right now, and also very not, right? Like you see these videos that look incredible, and then you see these videos that are still very challenging, and things, like the glass holding and all that are still challenging. I think we've seen it a lot in manufacturing and warehouses because you can have specific use cases, but I think to let it in the home will happen. I think it just has to be good enough and the ROI has to be there. But the good news about robotics is once you get revenue, it's very, very sticky.
And are you a believer in robotics from the purpose of a single purpose robot, or are you more on the humanoid robot perspective? Obviously, there's quite a bit of a competing belief when it comes to these worlds.
I actually think it's sort of a limiting belief to think that they're competing beliefs because
Yeah.
I think that they're for very different things. I think that humanoid robots are phenomenal for certain things that we're doing, and you will have autonomous single purpose for lots of other things. And when I look at the enterprise space, I see a lot of interesting single use cases, right? Even in my home, I can think of a few good single use cases that I would just do all the time. So I think you're going to have both.
Okay. AI agents. You specifically talked about agents in finance and handling transactions. I love AI agents. I have a VC-backed AI agent startup myself in the recruiting world. So this is what I live and breathe 100 hours a week. But within other areas of the enterprise, finance, marketing, so there's so many areas where agents are going to completely revolutionize the world. And software as a service, I believe, will very quickly morph to service as a software when we have agentic workflows, which are better and cheaper than humans. But when it comes to finance in particular, one thing that scares me is the element of trust. Like I've been using agent mode on ChatGPT these past few days, and I've been giving it my card. It's been, working on some basic transactions. I've still been going in to approve certain things. But do you feel like the everyday person will just trust their agent to make transactions for them without their consent?
No, I don't think they'll trust them to do that because the thing about money, and you can ask the credit card companies on how many cases they get a year, it's billions and billions of dollars. This wasn't my transaction. I don't want to pay for this. Like people very much care if you get their money wrong. And so that's why you have to create different systems. It's one thing to give it a credit card and ask it to buy a flight for you. That's actually a pretty straightforward and easy use case. But it's another thing when you have agents talking to agents doing workflows. Like let's say you wanted to make you a new logo for your VC-backed startup. Now it has to go talk to another agent, but it doesn't really want to release payment until you've gotten the logo and you like it. And so you just have to build the setup for payments in a different way there. But I think there's so many use cases for agents. I mean, I think we're also getting the biggest problem that I see right now is where you're using non-deterministic versus deterministic tools. So the best companies I know building agents right now have a mixture because otherwise you have this problem of like compounding non-determinism where if something is probabilistically correct and then you go through a couple of agents that are probabilistically correct, you have a challenge. I mean, the models are getting better incredibly quickly at a fast rate. So maybe that problem goes away faster than we all think, but also in the short term, you have to build with that in mind. And in a couple of things that I've invested in recently, so another sort of second and third order implication of code gen is cyber and cybersecurity. So now we have all automated code. There's a lot of more cyber risks in that. And so I actually backed a company called Staris. You might know Expo, which Sequoia backed. The Staris is very similar to that, but they're very good at having context, which is very unique in what they're doing. And they are sort of automated penetration testing. And so they're using agents in a way that helps you basically better identify some of your security threats. And then I also invested in a company called Cortex, which is doing agents for the enterprise. And I mean, the agents are being applied everywhere. And I think in the short term, I do believe that it's really allowing people to just 10x their productivity. But as it's not perfect yet, you do have to figure out where you apply it and what you trust it with in the short term. But part of the reason that they're not doing as much with transactions that they could be doing is that we need the payment systems to be solved. So I invested in a company called Payman, but there's a number of people thinking through this. And you could take a crypto lens, you could take a bank lens, maybe not popular with some, but I really, for this particular thing, feel like the bank compliant lens is the one that will win first.
Okay. Lastly, you said about the future of compute. And for me, the exciting part there is as we build out these data centers, as the cost becomes lower and lower and more compute begins to happen, we approach the point where some people believe we'll achieve AGI, whatever that means. And the definition does shift and change. Originally, it was the Turing test, and I think we passed that at like 3.5. And now people believe, a number of different things, but some people believe when it's going off completely autonomously and doing everything, and we're sitting back and relaxing as the world is automated or whatever. Do you think in 10 years from now, we'll have a universally agreed upon definition of AGI, which is in reality, when most people would say, yeah, we've achieved AGI at this point?
Yeah, I think it'll be far faster than that. I had a dinner kind of, with a lot of people at the front of the field, and we asked this question, like, and I think 2 or 3 of the 10, 15 people said that they felt like we actually were already there.
Yeah.
We've already passed it. And a couple people said it's close. But I think, yes, we will have a definition that we all agree. I think the question is then what are the implications of that? And well, how does it play out? And I think that's definitely something that I spent a lot of time thinking about.
When I play around with some of the like super cutting edge tools like Manus or VO3, I feel like AGI is here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And most people, they haven't left the ChatGPT bubble yet, and they don't know what's happening out there. But very soon they will, and it's going to completely change everything.
Yeah, I think we all live in definitely our own bubble of people who know technology. I said to someone ChatGPT the other day, I mean, to be fair, it was in a different geography, different context, but then the person had not heard that word before, right? And so
Wow.
it does still happen, but it's certainly not the norm that we live in every day, for sure. But I think that is also an interesting opportunity because I think it's about making technology work for lots of people. Like everyone who drives a car cannot explain to you how the piston and the engine work. So we don't need that necessarily. You just need it to work for people. And I cannot think of a job or a person out there where it's not applicable to them in some way. It's applicable to everyone.
Yeah. Amazing. Maria, this has been amazing for people that want to build a company, that want to invest, that want to learn about the future of AI. If people have enjoyed this and they want to find out more about you, where would the best place be to go? Would it be X, LinkedIn, the fund's
Follow
website?
me on LinkedIn and X. Check out our website. I'm a new website coming soon as well. I am also probably starting a Substack this week. So I will, if I start it, I'll send it and you can include it in the episode notes. And I would just say the last piece of advice, because there's a lot of topic, even though you didn't ask, there's a lot of topics out there around VCs and founders. And I would just say, don't overly weight what VCs say. I say this to founders a lot, but it's great to get the perspective. We've seen a lot of companies, we back a lot of companies. If I have any one acute learning in more depth than anywhere else in the past 6 months, it's that the rules of the game have never been different. So you want to build something, go find a customer, build something that they love, which has always been true. But the way you do it for today, because building a company is so much different than it was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 10 years ago. And so just do it the way that you think is intuitively right for your audience and you'll figure it out.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you click the follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Introducing Lisa, the world's first AI-powered recruiter. She's an AI agent who works 24/7, screening candidates on autopilot, conducting interviews in 30 different languages, uploading all the best candidates to your applicant tracking system. Hire 10 times faster at 90% lower cost and significantly improve the candidate experience. Visit welovealpha.com to start your free trial now.